Hello, welcome everybody who is joining us for the Agents Together webinar today. This is the first of our redundancy programme series, and I am absolutely honoured and delighted to be joined by some fabulous people today, some real experts from our industry who have very kindly given their time willingly and for free, I should say, always, to share lots of ideas with everybody who is worried about redundancy, worried about getting that confidence back, but also the tips and ideas of how to really overcome it, the practical advice. And we've got Jennifer Scott-Reid from eProp Services here, we've got Stuart Perkins from Boomin, Ian White, of course, from Crux Careers, and Josh Rayner from Rayner Personnel. So I'm absolutely delighted. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me and helping everybody. Perhaps before I get started, we're going to have a great discussion today. We've got lots of questions and lots of things to talk about. Perhaps you could introduce yourselves. So I'm going to start with Jennifer. Jennifer, could you just give a short appraisal of who you are and how you've arrived at talking to us today?
I'm Jennifer Scott-Reid. As you say, I'm Head of Employee Engagement and Development for eProp Services, and eProp Services, of course, own the Guild of Professional Property Professionals and also Fine and Country. And the reason we changed our name from HR, and I only came in January, was we wanted to change the culture to more people-focused than process-focused. And with that in mind, when you guys set up the mentoring scheme, I wanted to be very much part of that. And also in discussion, I've been doing an awful lot of things with our own staff on podcasts, webinars on mental health things. So very much, I've been a management consultant. I've run my own company for 15 years. So I have a lot of experience of helping people through these kind of times. So that's why I'm here.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jennifer. And we're very privileged to have you. Stuart, perhaps you could just tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everybody. I've got an interesting background, I guess, that I spent 10 years being a recruitment consultant, working in loads of different industry sectors, loved it to bits. And then I went from poacher to gamekeeper, I guess. There's a bit of a revolution going on where companies wanted to have their own recruitment consultants almost in-house. So I joined that. And never looked back. So for the last 15 years or so, I've run in-house recruitment teams and then moved across, a bit like Jennifer was saying, into kind of HR and now people. The current role is Head of People at Boomin. Hopefully a lot of you have heard of us now, even though we haven't actually launched yet. Very exciting times, lots of recruitment going on. So I'm certainly very hands-on. So I've spent a lot of time looking at CVs and on LinkedIn. So hopefully I can pass on a few bits of tips and advice. I've also run outplacement workshops in the past when we could have those in buildings with people looking for work. So hopefully I can offer some help and advice. So nice to meet you all.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us. I know you're very busy, Stuart, so we're delighted to have you. Thank you. Ian, perhaps you could tell everybody about yourself.
Okay, yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Delighted to be here today, and thank you for asking me. So in this capacity, I run a business called Crux Careers, which is a recruitment business. I myself am a career estate agent. I did estate agency for about 29 years, I think, in total. And through the work I do as a consultant with lots of estate agencies, they wanted to create their own recruitment business to look after themselves, and it sort of grew from there, really. So very pleased to be able to offer anybody advice today or in the future. And that's me. That's what I do.
Thank you very much. Brilliant. And 29 years as an estate agent, really? Were you?
Yeah, I know I don't look it. I've got a bit of a baby face, but 29 years as an estate agent, yeah.
Well, talking about baby faces, and last but definitely not least, Josh, perhaps you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, everyone. My name's Josh. I own a company called Rayner Personnel. Again, we are a property recruitment company. We've got consultants up and down the country. Sadly, not done 29 years, but been in the industry for the last 15 and have worked and still work a desk as a consultant. So see lots of CVs and then constantly on LinkedIn. So hopefully I can share some of my expertise and knowledge with everyone on the call.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Josh, and thank you all again for joining us. So The whole reason, I won't go into the background of Agents Together, but our two founding pillars were about people having a healthy mind and a healthy business. And ultimately, all of our founder members, I don't know if you know, but we meet on a weekly basis and we talk about the pertinent points, the issues and the challenges that are happening in the industry and how we, Agents Together, as a charity, can help support individuals to basically have a healthier mind and ultimately therefore have a healthier business or business life, as it may be, a career, for example. And, you know, coronavirus has been a real nightmare for many this year. And whilst the estate agency industry has enjoyed things like the stamp duty holiday, for example, and of course the pent-up demand, which was caused for a lot of people wanting to seem to want to move to the Lake District, to be honest with you. But there's lots of people moving, and that has been good. But the reality of the situation is estate agents were closed for over 3 months, as many businesses were as well, and there were lots of changes afoot, and the redundancy is at its highest level that it's been, not necessarily in a state agency but across the whole of the UK workforce now, that it has been in the last 3 years. 227,000 people were made redundant in August, which is astonishingly high numbers and really worrying. And as furlough comes to an end, here we are ready to make sure that we are putting together some really useful advice, guidance and content for anybody who needs it in the estate agency industry. And that's why we've assembled this brilliant group of people to help us. So thank you again. We're going to move on in this. The style of today is very much going to be about lots of pertinent questions, important questions that many people have shared with us when we've been doing our research for this. And I'm going to basically ask the expert, and they're going to share their tips and guidance. It could be crazy because I'm sure they've all got lots and lots to say, but nevertheless, we'll get a bit of go in that style. So the first question I've got for the wonderful experts is, it's a busy job market out there at the moment. I think, Stuart, you will attest to that definitely. I'm hearing all kinds of numbers regarding how many CVs are received for one job. So perhaps you could share some light on that, any of you really, about how many CVs now typically for one job in an estate agency business. Can you give some light?
I'm happy to start. I mean, we're recruiting people right across the piece at the moment, not just estate agents, but tech and customer services. It does really tend to vary on the type of role, but I'm tending to find with job boards and LinkedIn that you can easily come back, if you advertise in the evening, come back in the morning to 30, 40, 50 applications overnight. So if you add referrals and emails on top of the advert response, then yeah, large numbers for definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And is that something that you, Ian, are seeing as well?
Certainly high volumes, and we're probably tracking around 120 applications a day. However, the quality, you know, I wouldn't suggest that's 120 real applications, because there are people that just push apply. They haven't really read the job ad. But yeah, the number of people applying from outside of the sector to come in is at a record high, and a number of people from within the sector who are looking to change for whatever reason will be higher than I've experienced it. So yeah, candidate applications isn't a problem. It's the quality and the realistic nature of the candidate fitting the vacancy.
That's really, really interesting. So Josh, are you finding that as well, what Ian's just said?
Yeah, definitely. I think it depends on the role. I think Stuart and Ian hit the nail on the head. The more junior admin-y kind of roles, you get a higher response to. I think we had an advert out for administrator for a property-based business, had over 1,000 hits in a day. CVs coming in, and like Ian said, the quality of them applicants aren't suitable sometimes for the role. I would say for the more senior roles, you used to be getting 6 to 10 people. We're seeing 20 to 30 now for them senior roles. So there is a bit more movement and there is a bit more increase, but it is quality over quantity, definitely.
So that's really interesting because 3 of you now, and I'll come to you in a moment, Jennifer, 3 of you have sort of said that there's people just hitting apply, and you know, therefore they're not deemed quality. So people who are on this webinar are probably considering, well, I just need to apply for as many jobs as possible and see what I can get a land, basically. Do you think that's actually a very dangerous strategy for people to employ for themselves when they're looking for a job? I don't know whether you've got thoughts on that, Jennifer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that people need to think about is the role they're going for, why they are the person for that role. And you tailor your application not only to the employer, so you have to research them, but also to your own skills and how you evidence those skills. And people just doing a blanket approach, you can tell, you know, all of us have seen so many CVs that you just know where it's, you know, just cliches and it hasn't got any substance to it. So yeah, I think it's very dangerous.
It's actually been quite a long time since I updated my CV, which is quite a nice thing to be able to say, actually. But I remember one of the things that I got told was, you know, every time you redo your CV, it needs to be tailored exactly to the role that you're applying for, not just covering letter and then CV that's the same for everybody, actually making sure that the CV is adapted. Is that still advice that would be solid advice?
Yeah,
I'd say absolutely.
Great.
That was a categorical yes.
It was unison, wasn't it? I was like conducting an orchestra. It was fantastic. Superb. That's brilliant. Well, great stuff. So I'm going to ask each of you individually, if I may, again, because this is a big thing for me. Obviously, you've just said that it ranges from everything from 30 to 120 CVs potentially for one role. So it's easy to imagine. I visualize it in like paper format, like stacks of paper. I'm sure it doesn't look quite like that anymore. It's just very full inboxes. But that, I mean, how on earth does somebody manage to make their CV stand out? I mean, we could probably talk about that forever, but what are some of your top tips? I don't know, Josh.
Again, yes, standing out from the crowd is a must in this market. As we said, there's loads of applications. I think it's been concise. So a lot of people said stick to a one-page CV. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do think having pure figures, examples, evidence of what you've done in regards to that would be good. Don't just put some words down to make it a full page or make it 2 pages. Actually evidence, figures, achievements, and why you're right for the role. Again, include a picture. I've done some tips and some bits and pieces in the past, and a photo, I think, is always a good thing on a CV. Most people are sort of in front of cameras now doing things like this, and you've probably got your photo on social media, so the employer will check you out before they interview you anyway. So having the CV, I don't think is a bad point. And one thing I just want to mention as well is grammar on the CV. Estate agents are absolutely into the detail, and they want to make sure that the person can spell correctly and make sure that they're the right image for the business. And formatting. So a lot of people and a lot of CVs that I see on a daily basis, they start with their last job at the bottom of their CV. So the most current job is right at the bottom. You have to scroll down to the bottom of the CV to actually find out where they're working now. And you're not really too keen about what they did in 1986. You really want to know what they're doing in 2020. So formatting a CV, I think, is really key.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So with this achievements thing, I just want to focus on that, if I may. I sometimes, when I'm wearing my All Stars hat, I look at some CVs for some of my clients, and I am often really shocked at how the achievements and the actual impact, either financial or volume, people have had on a business. That just never, it's all words and not a lot of facts and figures to back it up. However, having said that, I sometimes wonder whether people are worried about its relevance. Does this come back to how much research you've done on the company that you're applying for, and therefore what figures you should do? Do you think? I don't know, Jennifer, you're nodding. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think your CV, you should research the company, and I think on two reasons. One, find out what's important to the company, so that, again, as you're saying, all your evidence goes in with that. But as you take it further, look at the application, look at the language that they use. What they're going to give you all of the clues in what they're looking for. And how you build rapport when we're talking like this is you find common ground. So one of the things that people should do in a CV is find that common ground, use their language as well. So yeah, it is, you've got to be much more strategic, and therefore it's a little bit like us. We will look at only a few CVs that absolutely strike home to us. When you're applying for a job, it's much better to spend a lot more time and get it right on 10 applications than doing 100, 1,000.
Yeah. That, I mean, that is such good advice. So many businesses now, as we move into 2020 and beyond, and especially with what we've just been through with coronavirus, culture is such a big thing now, and core values. And I think from my point of view, Josh helped us find the wonderful Sam Offley, who works for us at Agents Together, and it was amazing because it was his core values that really hit home with us, and why he came to work with us, because he had that shared passion and determination and drive to help people. And that for me, as somebody who has recently employed somebody, was critical. That was the bit they got it. They really got it, and that was very obvious from the outset. So yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. So Ian, Stuart, I don't know, where are you at with these CVs, making them stand out? I mean, you've probably got different opinions, being that one of you is currently recruiting and one of you is recruiting in a different way.
I'll go first, not controversial at all. I think Josh and Jennifer made some really good points. A couple of things that sort of spring to mind, really. So when Jennifer talked about kind of knowing the business you're applying for and what's important, I know it sounds really obvious, but the advert, if there's a job description, just really read that, try and understand the sort of words that are being used, the tone of the language, that sort of stuff. And perhaps a really crude example, but hopefully useful, is and it obviously depends on what element of estate agency it might be, but if a particular role is about let's say account management or retention of customers or servicing of customers, then one of the things I see quite often in CVs for those types of roles is lots of sales figures saying, I've increased my branch, or I've got 150% of target, and I made £300,000 last year. Or if we're looking for a particular role about service and retention and account management, then that straight away might tell us that the person's going to be perhaps more interested in sales as opposed to customer service or retention or building longer term relationships. And a lot of that you would, as Jennifer rightly said, you could pick up from the advert or the job description, or a bit of research, their own marketing, their own website, their own LinkedIn pages. So I think that's really important. And then the other point as well, which I think is about perhaps more about CVs standing out, and it's an example that someone told me a couple of years ago, is if there were 3 or 4 of you working in a particular estate agency, and let's say you're all negotiators, I think laziness sometimes with CVs and applications are all talked about, but it might be that you've got quite a good job description that's been prepared by your branch manager, and all you would do is you would literally cut and paste your job description into your CV or your LinkedIn profile. What you've got to imagine is if all 4 of you applied for a job with a particular employer, you're going to see the same thing, and nothing's necessarily going to stand out. So that's exactly where, as everyone's mentioned, if you can put something in there, 3 or 4 key achievements down to you personally, whether that was an Employee of the Month, or it was a customer service award, a promotion, or if it was around sales or growth of your business, then put those in there because they're unique to you. And suddenly, if I'm looking at 4 CVs from the same business, the same sort of job role, then one of those people is potentially going to be the one that stands out to me.
Great, really good advice. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Everybody is unique, and we're very, we've all got individual qualities, and we've got to kind of believe in ourselves a little bit and have that confidence to make ourselves sort of stand out and sing. And I think people who have perhaps been made redundant might be struggling with that, but remember that often redundancy is only through restructuring because of the business's needs. It's not a reflection necessarily on that individual per se, and therefore being proud of the performance and what you have achieved when you've been in that role is vitally important, and you should absolutely demonstrate that on your CV. So fantastic advice, thank you. And Ian, anything to add on this one with regards to your CV standing out and in 2020 and beyond?
Yeah, I think I'd echo everything there. Photographs I think are good. If you're going to have a photograph, get it taken properly or have a really good one. I think sometimes if it looks as if you snapped it on your iPhone, it probably does more harm than good. But a photograph's a good thing to have. But we are moving from a sort of vacancy rich, candidate poor environment, probably to something that might be the reverse of that. Just to make sure for clarity, it's 120 applications we receive a day on a various, it's not per vacancy, or rarely, I would have thought. I mean, that's we don't get 120 applicants on an individual vacancy, but we are definitely moving into an area where you're going to be competing for the attention of the job stakeholder. So you've got to write your CV as if you were the recipient of it and you were doing the recruiting. So the CV should be specific to each job vacancy, and it should be written as if you are clearly demonstrating. You've got to grab Stuart saying that he's overwhelmed with CVs coming. You've got to grab this guy's attention, otherwise you just go in the round file, you don't get a reply. You know, he needs to know very quickly in that first summary sentence. You've got to grab him by the short and curlies, or anybody that's going to be making a decision on whether to interview you or not. That summary sentence really does need to be quite powerful, and I would have that first and foremost on my CV as the most powerful aspect. The only other thing I would say is make sure that your CV matches your LinkedIn profile, because when it doesn't, there is an element of distrust between the employer and the potential recruit to say, well, hang on, what are they hiding or what are they not hiding? In one or t'other, and we get that quite a lot from where we have technology that reads that, and then we ask those questions, and often it's because they don't want to let us know they've job hopped. You know, they just go. We then put them in the brown file, let alone the stakeholders at the other end.
That's really interesting. So I have come across in my career as well, as I'm sure you guys have come across a lot more than me, some overinflated figures and things that appear on your CV. And you're right. I think we've got to be acutely aware now, haven't we? That, you know, just be honest. I think honesty is the best policy, unless you guys tell me any different, because it's so easy to fact check now with the internet. Obviously I've had the internet quite a while, but with LinkedIn, the prevalence of it, and with the fact that, you know, you can pretty much find out anything you want. So if you even think about telling a few white lies on your CV, it's not going to get anywhere. Am I right in my thinking there?
Absolutely,
or you're going to end up getting the wrong job, Sarah, anyway. Either way, you're either going to get a job that doesn't fit, or you're going to get found out by either the recruiter or the stakeholder, depending on where in the process you fall foul of that. So it's a waste of time to fib on your CVs.
Yeah. Okay. This is just superb advice. Really brilliant. Thank you all so much. So what are the biggest mistakes that you see on a CV? Maybe you could each give me your top mistake that you see that you just wish people would stop doing immediately. Jennifer?
It would be failure to tailor. It would be the fact that they haven't bothered.
Okay, great. Failure to tailor.
Yeah, you can't say it.
Yeah, great, fantastic.
I would 100% echo that a CV is not, if you're going to be lazy enough to just send out a CV randomly to 50 different jobs, you're much better off spending time preparing properly and producing a CV for the 3 or 4 jobs that you really want, that really suit, that really fit, and bespoking your CV to that particular person that you're trying to attract.
Josh, biggest mistake?
Echo what everybody else says, but also just making sure your current job is at the top of your CV. It's an absolute nightmare for a recruiter. They've got a busy diary already, to then start chopping around your CV and copy and pasting it so it's at the top and reformatting it. I think spend the time, by everyone said in the call, really making sure your CV stands out, and having your top job, the current job at the top, is an absolute must and a nightmare for probably an internal recruiter as well as an external recruiter as well.
Great advice. Stuart?
I'll pinch one that Josh mentioned earlier, I think. So spell check for definite. If you get a CV that's littered with spelling errors or grammatical errors, then it especially, as Josh said, a lot of the roles that you want, if you're going to be listing properties, you don't want it full of errors and stuff necessarily, or just communicating with customers or suppliers, whatever else, then yeah, it tells you a lot. If it's just littered with errors, it can put you off pretty quickly. So
yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And there's a really interesting, I think it's an app that you can put on your certainly on your laptop and potentially on your phone, called Grammarly. I don't know if any, I'm sure you've come across that, but I mean, it's, I think it's pence to buy, or maybe even free. I don't know. Someone will have to check that out. I'll put a link when we post some of these videos. But it just basically does that job for you, doesn't it? And it's well worth it, because there's nothing worse. It just kind of makes you look like either one, you couldn't be bothered, or two, unfortunately, your grammar and your language and spelling is not brilliant.
Actually, Sarah, there's also a very simple technique that people can do to grammar check themselves.
Oh,
read it out loud.
okay.
If it doesn't sound right, it's probably wrong. And actually, most people read it in their head. But if you read something out loud, you can tell where punctuation needs to go, or you can pretty near spot when there's a grammatical error.
That's absolutely fantastic. And you've just made me think of something, Jennifer, so thank you for that. With the Agents Together speedy mentoring sessions that you guys all offer, you could actually read it out loud to your mentor. I'm sure they'd love that. That could work. We could offer that as a service at Agents Together. Maybe that's something we'll do. Great advice. Last thing from me, because I'm not the expert here on recruitment, not by far, but I've got a real aversion to people, going back to the photo thing that Josh said, people who have selfies as their profile picture on LinkedIn or on what accompanies their CV. What's the verdict on selfies? It's a no.
No.
It's a thumbs down from everyone.
You haven't got any friends or anyone to take the photo.
I think selfies are great on the social media, like on Facebook or Instagram. But when you're going for a job, you want to show your best side, don't you? So LinkedIn and CVs, I think you need to have a professional photo done. And
yeah. I'm so glad you said that, because it sounds really obvious, right? And look, we're in selfie generation now, definitely millennials and below. It's just, that is the normal photography, right? For sure. But ultimately, I think, and it's really easy to do, but it's got a place, but not on your sort of professional stuff that you're putting out. Excellent. Fantastic. Well, on that, I'd quite like to sort of move on. I mean, that was just some fantastic advice regarding sort of CVs, but obviously so much now, we touched on it is fact checked on LinkedIn, and in fact so much recruitment, I believe, is done on LinkedIn now. And I certainly know that anybody that I come into contact with, I Google and I check out on LinkedIn. It's a bit weird, actually, but I think we all do it, right? I was at a conference a while back, and there was a fantastic lady called Lindsay Boyd on stage, and she stood on the stage, and there was a full theatre full of people, and she said, "Put your hand up if you think you're being Googled before you go to a meeting." And about 5 to 10 people put their hands up. I can't remember exactly. Then she said, "Put your hands up if you Google somebody before you go to a meeting." Whole place put their hands up. So we have this weird perception as humans that people aren't checking us out, but that we check everybody out. So it doesn't make any sense, does it, right? So I think my message here is a roundabout way of saying, you are being basically checked out online a lot by people who are interested in what you've got to offer, and specifically when you're in the job market. So LinkedIn, why is LinkedIn so important right now when you're in the job market? Who wants to kick me off?
I'm happy to start. So again, I talked about my experience of being a recruitment consultant and then working in-house and helping companies to recruit directly. And most companies now have a LinkedIn, what's called a recruiter license. So in crude terms, if people haven't heard of it, what that enables me to do is to search in the back office part of LinkedIn, and I can use literally any criteria you can possibly imagine, whether that be companies, job titles, qualifications, software experience, any location, anything, how many jobs people have had, for how long, size of company, just about anything you can possibly imagine. And it enables me to go and do very, very powerful, detailed searches of basically everybody on LinkedIn. And because virtually everybody is on LinkedIn, that's a pretty powerful kind of network. So ultimately, it's almost like in the old days, a recruitment agency. It's a database, but it's almost like sort of open source. People can do that anyway. If you've all got LinkedIn on your phones or laptops now, you can search for people or put a company name or job title in, but it usually will restrict you to how many times you can search and what you can see. But companies, whether it's a recruitment consultancy or a business employing directly, will probably pay some kind of license to get pretty much unlimited access. And more importantly, they can contact people without necessarily being a connection and ask them if they're interested in particular roles. So it's basically, it's just like an open source database of just about everybody. So it's pretty critical. And reasons you said as well is, you know, if you're going to meet someone or you've heard someone's name or seen them in an article, then you're probably going to check them out on LinkedIn. So it's a pretty powerful tool.
Yeah. Would you say, Ian, that every CV that you receive, it's a lot of LinkedIn profiles, that you check them out on LinkedIn?
Not if they don't pass the initial filtering process. If for whatever reason, through reading through the CV, poor spelling, more than so many jobs in a period of time, no, we would, the technology would reply that they're not suitable, thanks very much, you know, politely. But the ones that we feel are suitable, we would typically make contact with. And if from there we thought they were suitable, we would then look at their social profiles. And then if they were still somebody in the game, we would then pass them on to the stakeholder of the job that we had in place, typically with a video of them and a video. In some cases, we would get video references ahead of the introduction to say, look, here's the person, here's their video, here's their CV, and here's their most recent boss saying why he thinks you should consider them and possibly why they left. Because we're getting asked that a lot now. Well, why are they the one that got, particularly in the lower roles, why are they the one that got made redundant? There is an assumption that if somebody's been made redundant, it's because they were the weakest link in particularly in a state agency. Yeah. And of course, to be fair and unfortunate, that may well be the case in some instances, but actually in some cases, it's a really sad fact that they've had to let somebody go. And if that boss is prepared to come on and say, look, I've got to be honest with you, I let this guy go with heavy heart. Here are his skill sets. Here's his top of the league in January, March, April. That makes a recruiter, actually the job stakeholder, take much more interest in that particular person, because we've done, the filtering's done for them. So for the advice of the people here without a job, if you're looking for a job, and whether you're going direct or whether you're going through a recruiter, make it easy for the person to realize why you're the one they need to speak to. Yeah. Make yourself stand out. But yeah.
The two things I wanted to pick up there. The first being the use of video. I'm going to come on to that. I know we're talking about LinkedIn, but I think it's important. So you mentioned about video. I've spoken before this call with Stuart, who and it's something that I share. I get sent, we do a lot of content at Agents Together, as many of you know, and the wonderful Sam sends me heaps and heaps of videos and content. And I have to actually set time aside at the weekend to watch these videos, because there aren't enough hours in the day to watch all these videos that keep landing in my inbox. But I have to make the time, of course, because it's really vital and important that we've checked it over. Stuart mentioned to me that sometimes, getting 50 videos in your inbox potentially is like, just blindsides you, and you may never get to watch anything on Netflix ever again because you've got to watch 50 videos. Where are we all at with video, the use of video in a CV? Not in LinkedIn, but in a CV setting at the moment? Obviously, Ian, it's something you use a lot. What do you think?
Yeah, I think from Stuart's point of view is that obviously he is trying to avoid using recruiters, which I fully understand. If I was the MD of any business, I would absolutely be trying to avoid using recruiters. However, recruiters aren't just about finding you the candidates that you had. We sort of do that horrible, nasty bit of filtering people out on your behalf. So it depends on the relationship. If you're being inundated directly from the marketplace with CVs, then there's not a lot of choice you've got other than to go through the process of looking through them. And someone like Stuart or Jennifer will have trigger points that creates a no and a yes, and then they'll look deeper into the no's and the yeses, I guess. But I don't know what their process is. But if as a recruiter, if you're working strongly and often with a particular client and you really know what they want, and you send them a video and they know what you want, they'll typically then take the opportunity to spend that little bit of time looking at it. We definitely have a higher reaction rate to a well-written CV, obviously, with a video, with a reference from somebody. The chances of that turning into an interview and a job offer are significantly higher.
So that's so it's interesting because thinking of this as an individual job hunter, what you just said, obviously from a recruiter's perspective, sending them and doing that filtration, I completely understand. I was thinking, you know, if Sarah Edmondson was sitting here today deciding that she wanted to stand out, there's a piece of software on the market, and I sound like I get like some kind of referral money for this stuff. I don't, but it's called BombBomb, and it enables you to email people videos. And I just thought to myself, I don't know, like, would that be a way to make you stand out in somebody's inbox, or is that just a little bit OTT? I don't think Jennifer's laughing and shaking her head. I'm not sure. What do you think, Jennifer?
I think as a backup, I like what Ian's saying, and I know Josh does the same. In the fact, if you're using recruiters, it's nice to see the CVs first and then to get it backed up, maybe with a video, because sometimes you can get a lot more from the video. You can see much more, you know, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. However, if you start with the video, you need to have the content first, because, you know, again, the video gives you the extra. Video should never say what a CV says. It should be the additional stuff. So like you were talking about values, this is where you put in the stuff that isn't on the CV. So personally, I think you've got to get through the CV first. If we then like you, then, you know, have a video. And this is where videos on LinkedIn are probably better, as long as you're not regurgitating your CV, as long as you're doing something value added.
Okay. Yeah, I think if you're gonna do a video, Jennifer, we get either 3 key questions from the job holder that they want answering on a video, or we're asking them to specifically respond to the job ad, i.e. tell us why in this video, and you've got 90 seconds to tell us why this person should have you in front of them, specifically not reading your CV out. There's no point in reading your CV out online. I mean, it's boring enough reading it, let alone hearing somebody read it to you.
You'd have to hold a piece of paper, wouldn't you? You'd be like reading down, like 1997 to 2000. Where was I? That would be me anyway. Excellent. Okay, great stuff. And Stuart, you know, look, you said to me, just tell us about video. Tell us honestly about your thoughts as somebody who is hiring 42 people at the moment.
Yeah, you really throw me out there. Thanks for that.
Sorry.
No, I'm joking. It's fine. No. In fairness, the points that Ian's just been making, and I know Josh uses them very successfully as well. I completely agree with where they're tailored, and we do occasionally obviously use recruitment consultants as well. Absolutely. What's good for me is if I am using a third party expert recruiter, is that they will say to me, Stuart, we've looked at 30 or 40 CVs. We've narrowed it down to 6 based on your criteria, and here's a short list. And as Ian said, we might say there's 3 really key elements we're looking for. And if that's a short video on each candidate, then that is absolutely powerful. And so if your recruiters do that route with you, then absolutely as an end client, that's fine. And I'm really up for that. Where I joke with Sarah about a bad experience is perhaps over the last 6 or 7 weeks, I've had not hundreds by any means, but certainly 8 or 10 videos sent to me. And it's basically been someone saying very, very confidently, Stuart, Boomin, they need me. I'm the best person for you. You don't need to look at anybody else. I'm going to work for Boomin. And that's the bit that kind of, as you might all be able to tell, the bit that kind of not riled me because it made me smile. It certainly made me remember the person. But I've never had, obviously, I don't know. I think there's definite use for video because it can save me a lot of time if I was given a short list of interview responses, definitely. But people telling me that the best things since sliced bread and jumping out of logos and some clever graphics and stuff, then yes, I've had that. Yeah, that's the bit that put me off.
I'll delete that off my YouTube channel. No, I'm only joking.
Yeah,
definitely. That's incredible because I suppose we're so keen to stand out as humans, and we're told that the whole purpose of this webinar was stand out, and people are trying to be creative, which is amazing, and you never want to sort of curb that enthusiasm, do you? But I think you have to tone it, and I do a lot of work around the idea of actually how can we be more empathetic and more compassionate and slightly less ego, and actually how that can still mean that you get the role. You don't have to, just tell everybody how brilliant you are all the time. You might still actually get a job if you don't. The second point, which was from about 10 minutes ago, so was Ian said something really interesting to me about how the person who got made redundant might be the weakest link. And I would like to say something controversial on that, if I may, and ask your advice. And I'll start with Josh. Is it always that the person is the weakest link, or are they in the wrong environment with the wrong leadership, and therefore they may have been made redundant, but actually, yes, well, ultimately it might not be their doing that they're seen as the weakest link. Josh, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's necessarily the person. Sometimes it can be. And I don't think the person, if there was a team of 5 and the one that is made redundant is the weakest, sometimes it does happen that way round. I think redundancy is a window of opportunity. I've always said that. When you get made redundant, you can look at the whole landscape, whether it be the same industry or a different industry, and use your skill sets in different industries to find the right role for you. It is very hard to, from an agency point of view, to say that you've been made redundant, why am I going to hire you? And that's why you need to tailor your application to that and get a reference if you can as well. I think it really depends on the company and what's happened. If they've made a bulk of redundancies, clearly the MD or CEO of that business is not going to send out 400 referral letters to each and every person, and people can see that. It really depends on the circumstances here, I would say.
That's really interesting what you should say as well. So we, as our founder members, did some research, just some polls on social media just when we were putting together this series, and they asked everybody in their respective groups and followers on social media channels, and they've got thousands of people in there, and they asked, how many of you have in the estate agency industry have been made redundant at some point in your career? And it was 38% of people have been made redundant at some point. So it's not rare, and it's especially not rare now, given that we are in the sort of pandemic and the things that we're all dealing with here. So I think my message certainly is to sort of own it and take going back to remembering the performance that you have done during your previous role or any roles you've had before, making sure that really is delivered on your CV and any conversations that you're having as well. And I'm going to bring us back onto LinkedIn if I can. Sorry, we've gone right around the houses. Not like me at all, those of you that know me. LinkedIn. So can each of you please, and I'll start with Jennifer again, because you're all on a pattern on my screen, you see, so I keep going around. LinkedIn, what really makes somebody's LinkedIn profile stand out now? Because I see all kinds of weird and wonderful stuff. So what's some advice you've got there, and what should people be, job hunters, be focusing on with their LinkedIn?
I think make sure you complete your profile, but also for me, what I would say is think about what your unique value is, what your unique selling point is in anything, what your core values or whatever, and build everything from that, because then the roles you'll go for will kind of link into it. I think make sure that it doesn't just regurgitate your CV, that the information's there. But I think also this is your opportunity. This is your personal branding. Get stuff on there, follow, kind of, bring different things in. If you're following, let's say, TED Talks or kind of thought leaders in something, make sure you've got things on there. They probably say it better than you, but actually, if you're following them, get them on there. You'll also get, your profile up. I think, in everything is think about the relevance for you and update it constantly. I think one of the things is it's a little bit like your CV that we should tailor. I think, again, your LinkedIn you tailor, but the more you update, the more you keep yourself current, kind of on there. I think, as everyone said, professional photo. For me, a bugbear is an unprofessional email. That's great, keep it to personal. But if actually you're going for a job, don't say your bunny ears at hotmail.com. It's not necessarily going to get you, well, it might do, depends what job you're going for. But, on that, and I'm sorry, my doorbell keeps going through this. So it's all those things. It's attention to detail, and make sure that you do your research and you kind of keep it relevant.
I think, thank you, Jennifer, and what you've just said there about personal branding, but also taking the time to comment on other thought leaders, or perhaps share what they've done. I shared a post earlier this week about that Jacinda Ardern had some words that she'd said, And it was just a LinkedIn profile, and it was about leadership and how you can have compassion and empathy and still be an effective leader. And it really hit home with me, something that I really that really resonated. I've had like 10,000 views of that post because I put a picture of, if I'd put a picture of me, I wouldn't have had 10,000 views, right? But I'd got Jacinda Ardern, I've had over 50 comments, 200 and odd people have reacted to it. So it just demonstrates that people want to communicate with you and see that visibility of where you're connecting yourself with other, you know, prominent figures. I think TED Talks is absolutely relevant there as well, and sharing your knowledge. Okay, personal branding, real big one on LinkedIn. I think it's huge. Just Jennifer, before I move off and ask the guys some questions, how many times, or any of you actually, if you've got an idea of how many times a week so a job hunter should be posting physically on LinkedIn?
Well, it's interesting because if you think, I think the research says that 90% of recruiters look on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So actually, it's, if you're in the market, is just keeping that up to date all the time. Now, there is a downside to that where they say that if you start putting too much activity on, people know you're ready to move. So you've kind of got to be careful in kind of balancing it. But if you've always kept it up to date, and posting on a regular basis is just keeping it up there.
Okay, great. Any Josh, Ian, Stuart, have you got any feelings about the frequency that you should be posting? I'll come on to what you should be posting, but is there any thoughts on that?
Just depends if you're in the market for a job straight away. I would say daily. I had a candidate who was in prop tech, and she was very active, sharing her experiences on interviews, talking about where she lives and her quality, doing video content as well. I think you need to own the space and be an influence in your industry. If you know what you're talking about, you need to get that across. You need to comment on other people's posts, but also you need to get across why you're the person that a company needs to be talking to. Somebody recently, only last week, put a video out there which is very, very funny, and she ran it past me first about she was made redundant, and I think everyone in this call probably knows who it is. And she got loads and loads of likes and loads of comments, and subsequently she found a job the day after, and also ITV had called her to include her in the recent redundancy program they're bringing out. So just little things like that being noticed, I think, is the biggest thing. I agree with Jennifer. Too much of anything, people get bored and turn off. So it's about, I would say, little and often is probably my motto.
Okay, fantastic. So I've seen some people put things on their LinkedIn where the job title would be. They put like all kinds of emojis, and then it says like maximizing revenue and get it. What's the deal with this? Should people have that? How should you formulate that top line when you're seeking a job? Help me, and help these wonderful people, because nobody knows. Go on, Ian.
You can't search on emojis, if that helps.
Sorry, go on, Stuart.
As a recruiter, you can't search on emojis, so I'd say there's little benefit from them. It doesn't kind of devalue you, really, does it? Or make you look a bit, I don't know.
I think emojis are, they wouldn't turn me on as a person looking to recruit somebody. But I think they probably do reflect the person, and therefore I think that's a personal decision. But and again, it probably depends what type of job you're going for. Emojis, to me, I didn't even know what they were until a couple of years ago. So I'm not that they don't turn me on, but they do reflect what that person is. And in certain industries, that might be what someone's looking for, a little bit of flair, a little bit of artistic nature. I don't know, but certainly I think, just being succinct. I think if you're doing your daily posts, I know the one that Josh talked about, the lady on ITV, the content was genius, but actually she hashtagged the right people so that it got an audience straight away. So she became a marketeer through LinkedIn of her own requirement to fill a job. But an A player anyway, frankly, was never going to not, I don't think, get a job. So I'm not so sure of the content, everything else. I just think you need to be honest and succinct on your LinkedIn. I think the first sentence underneath your job title should be very quickly that you can take a real good grasp at the personality of this person, so that you can make a decision whether they fit culturally into your business. But we don't use the navigator tools. We have none of the we have specific reasons for that, which I won't go into on here, but we just don't use those tools because I'm not sure that they work. I think the messaging and everything now is just so overdone. I'm not so sure we use other methods, but LinkedIn is clearly a place to go and see where somebody is looking, and therefore make sure, if you want to be seen, that you're seen properly by the right people by doing the right things. And you know, if they play back this tape and listen to this tape, they'll pick up a whole lot of hints and tips on how their LinkedIn profile could look from the perspective of recruiters or stakeholders at the job end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just,
Stuart.
Sorry, I was just going to add, it might cover the last two questions, apologies, or even your next one. So just to give some kind of idea, really. So I ran a search literally just before I came on this call now on LinkedIn Recruiter, and I put in a job title as containing estate agent in England, and there are over 6,400 people that came up on my search results as current estate agents in England. So in terms of if you're asking an employer, obviously I'm not going to scroll through all 6,400, it's impossible. So then it comes down to, if I am searching, I'm putting in a range of search terms. So again, you sort of think about how are you going to show up towards the top of my list. And although people have said don't regurgitate your CV, which is true, because otherwise you could have War and Peace on your LinkedIn profile, don't be lazy. Make sure there's some keywords in there that reflect what you're about, what you're good at, and that might be previous job titles. Obviously, as I mentioned about company names, again, if you've put your career history in there, you don't have to put War and Peace in, but a job title, a company name, again, if you've used particular CRM with any of those businesses, that might be useful. Anything that's going to just help you show up at the top of that list ultimately is going to be a help, because you are amongst a lot of people that are being looked at.
Fantastic advice. Thank you so much. So what we're saying about LinkedIn is really, you know, if you are job hunting, you've been made redundant, and you're on this webinar, or you're watching this after the event, you know, protecting your personal brand, getting your personal brand out there, using video to do that, do it with regularity, but without bombarding people. And also make sure that the actual profile part is extremely succinct, but has keywords that would be relevant. Again, it goes back to the tailoring that Jennifer talked about, relevant to the industry, the vertical, or the specific roles that you're looking for. So with all of that in mind, I really have, and I'd love to get your feelings on it, my advice to everybody about LinkedIn. But I'd really, really love some input on this. Hopefully it's not too controversial. Again, I have a small habit of being like that. But I see sometimes people who are maybe in the market for a job are out, you know, obviously looking for work, but then they're also projecting a certain tone on other people's posts that can potentially be deemed quite aggressive, sometimes political. There's, by the way, everybody's got their own opinion and should have it, but it can sometimes be, I certainly look at it and think, oh, that person doesn't seem like a very good person to me. They're sort of, you know, really calling other people out in quite a nasty way. What's the verdict on that? Do you guys look at that? Do you see it? Does it worry you? Should people avoid it?
It's right, I think, across LinkedIn. I think you should keep your personal kind of faith and other political kind of interests, I think, off of LinkedIn. Ultimately, you're building relationships. A business, we're trying to build a relationship for you and to try and win a new job or whatever it may be. And it's built around trust. Well, if someone sees that in the current domain you're slagging off your competitor or not speaking very highly of somebody else, they're going to make a judgment pretty quickly on you. And unfortunately, people are always on the shelves, and they're the people, as Ian probably would confirm, that we can't place because they've had a negative background, I suppose, and doing negative things that aren't going to help them get a job. So I would say, look, keep anything like that off of LinkedIn. There's a time and a place, and it isn't on LinkedIn, that's for sure.
Excellent.
I think also, if it's something, quite often, if that's something you wouldn't say to someone's face, quite often people find it much easier to put it online. And actually, it's very telling about your own character. If you've got to put someone else down, then there's something wrong, personally. So that goes against my values. So that would be a no-no.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you've all agreed again. I was hoping that hadn't gone crazy, but I sometimes see some posts that people put on, and I think to myself it's just totally the wrong tone. You know, calling out other businesses. It's because that old adage in a estate agency where, you know, don't go in and sit on a sofa and tell them how terrible their current agent is that they've currently, you know, appointed. You know, it's just bad practice, and I think it paints a terribly bad picture of the individual that's doing it, not of the other people. So it has the entirely reverse effect. So excellent. I'm glad. Is there anything else as we come to wrap up this session now? Is there anything else that anybody should avoid on LinkedIn as any of your opinions?
Not that we haven't really discussed. I think you've nicely covered it off in terms of
Great.
the do's and don'ts. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, that's excellent. Well,
sorry, I was going to say, literally everyone's made the point about spelling and grammar and that sort of stuff on CVs. Although LinkedIn isn't supposed to be your CV, just bear that in mind again, because if you get spelling mistakes on job titles, company names, anything in your profile, then again it can put people off, especially when you're looking at hundreds of different people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very easy way to filter, isn't it? That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. We're on time, which is frankly unbelievable. Thank you to everybody who has joined us, and more importantly, thank you so much, Jennifer, Stuart, Ian, Josh, for joining me today, sharing all of this fantastic knowledge. I really think there's some great nuggets, some great advice in there for everybody. And anybody who is struggling with redundancy, or indeed just struggling in general, the pandemic has been really tough on us all. Don't forget, Agents Together is the charity there for you in the estate agency industry to support you. We've got our mentorship scheme, which you can apply through our website. I will be sending out to all of those that have signed up on the webinar, and all of those that have attended, we'll get the contact details of all of these wonderful people that are on this call, because they've all agreed to offer their services as speedy mentors. So that's a quick 30-minute session to give you some tips, advice, perhaps even read out your CV to them, as soon as that seems to be something we've imagined on this call. But thank you again. Thank you for joining us, and thank you all to our experts. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.